Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So we only have one pretty small piece of news. I'll go into a little bit of speculation about what I feel the stories they could do in upcoming comics that may or may not be announced soon could be. So yeah, we'll cover the news first just to get it out of the way. It's a new book, or rather a new kind of edition or version of a book that has already been announced, and that is this: Avatar The Last Airbender, the official cookbook gift set, recipes from the 4 nations. So it's Jenny Dorsey, 128 pages. This edition is coming out on the 14th of June 2022 and cost $44.99, and this compares to the original version of the book, which of course is this book, which is coming out on the 9th of November 2021 and costs $24.99, 128 pages. So the book is the same. So what is the difference? The difference is this: the gift set comes packaged with an exclusive apron. This gift set is the perfect present for any Avatar The Last Airbender fan. Exclusive apron. Show off your love of Avatar while keeping your clothes spotless with this exclusive apron. And that's really all there is to say here. What I do find interesting about this is that they have made the decision, seemingly I guess, this listing has gone up prior to the release of the sort of first version of the book. You'd think for sales purposes they'd maybe wait until after this was released to reveal that this book, which is not out for like 8 months later, has a special edition version. Now I think for sort of, I suppose, good consumer practices, I guess, it's actually good that we know about this. This way people who do want the ultimate version of this book can change their order. You could cancel your order for this copy of the book to go ahead and get what I guess is just the book with an apron, if that is what you so wish. So I actually think that's a decent move, even if maybe, I'm guessing this maybe was meant to be an official announcement a bit later on, maybe after it came out. But of course listings tend to go live for these things a bit earlier than most of the publishers really want. But yeah, that's the situation here. So your decision is obviously like, do you really want the cookbook and you need it as soon as possible? You buy it here and then get a second copy just to get an apron, or do you sort of ignore this release, just see what's going on with it, and then wait and get this version which comes with the apron, which is a, I suppose, cool usable piece of merchandise, I guess. A lot depends on what it actually looks like. It is probably the big thing in terms of like, is it the cover for the book on the apron? That'd be a bit weird. Or does it have some actual nice Avatar imagery on it? So, you know, there's a lot of things to consider here. I do have the cookbook ordered. I personally don't really have too much interest in sort of cancelling this just to get a version with an apron. So I just kind of want to see what the book actually ends up being like. So I'm fine sticking with this and doing a kind of early review on it, hopefully. But it's interesting. It kind of highlights again the Avatar kind of license being quite valuable, that even this book, which feels like one of the most kind of like odd sort of like tie-in things of just like, it's a cookbook that is trying to do Avatar stuff, but, and they have some flavor text stuff, but likely the flavor text isn't going to be all that interesting. They're actually doing like a special edition version of it, and going all in with this sort of like second release type thing. It's interesting to consider for sure. But that's really all there is to talk about with this. So before we get into the discussion, I suppose just again in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on this gift set. Does it make you change your buying decision on the November release of this book to hold off for this, or not? So yeah, then we'll get into, I won't make this a full discussion, I'll just try and keep this as brief as possible, but just, we are expecting Dark Horse Avatar comic announcements, and I suppose Korra comic announcements, soon. And the reason for that is that nearly a month ago at this point, they had a Suki Alone live reading on the Dark Horse official Twitch channel. And the moderators there who work for Dark Horse said a few things. So the first one that we got, and the most obvious one in terms of making it clear that announcements are coming, as you can see here, very, very soon, was this one. Another moderator came in later and said, you know, there will be news soon, and then there was another thing that said, you know, stay tuned for future news. So a lot of stuff that is just making it sort of clear that there is stuff ready to be announced, they're just waiting for the time to do it. And capital very soon feels like that could be any day now. Now again, keep in mind, this was nearly a month ago. I think in 3 days it'll be, or 3 or 4 days, this will be a month since this happened. So we're stretching the definition of soon, let alone very soon. But all of this is building up to a few things. One, they've said an announcement is coming soon. Two, there's needed to be an announcement for probably the last 6 months. So this has been sort of this inevitable thing. It has to happen sooner rather than later, because otherwise the schedule is looking terrible for next year when it comes to new books. Now, admittedly, this is just the Avatar side of things, but look at what is the stuff that isn't out yet. The Cookbook in a few weeks. It's not a Dark Horse thing. Reprint book here, North and South Omnibus in February. The month after this, March 22nd, Chibi Volume 1, Aang's Unfreezing Day. This is the only new story content on the schedule for Dark Horse, and it's been heavily pushed back, and I don't think there's a lot of hype behind it either. And then we don't even know if it's canon, because is the Chibi just the art style, or is it Chibi canon rather than official canon? We don't really know. The gift set thing, again, is not a Dark Horse book. And then the 2024 paperback releases of the Kyoshi books, again, not Dark Horse. And then on Korra, all we know about is that the book 3 change, art book 2nd edition and deluxe edition, are coming out also in February. That's it. That's the entire schedule for Dark Horse with regards to Avatar. It's North and South Omnibus, Chibi Volume 1, Aang Unfreezing Day, and Book 3 art book re-release. Now, Beast of the Four Nations we know exists, but has been postponed. As you can see, it's no longer listed here anymore, even though it should be here. So that book is going to have to get announced again at some point, along with the Book 4 art book as well. So this is what we need to keep in mind here, is that there are books that are obvious, but are not really exciting releases that are also going to have to get announced. And this is probably why it says some are coming very soon, is because it probably includes a new exciting book for Avatar and or Korra, and a lot of these other extra books as well. So Imbalance Omnibus is a book that will need to get announced at some point. Then it'd feel weird to just end the omnibus editions with just the first 5 comics when there's a clear third one, when there's a clear like 6th comic to follow that. On the library edition side of things, the Suki book, along with the Katara and Toph book, are going to need to be collected at some point. They are technically considered a trilogy of comics, the first one-shots. So a library edition collecting the 3 together seems like something that they will do just to do a re-release. Why wouldn't they? So we're sort of waiting to see on that. And then we get into, obviously, the stuff that I think everyone has been waiting for. And we've been waiting for this for a really long time. And that is, what's the next Avatar comic and what's the next Korra comic? Avatar comics are in a weird spot at the moment, because obviously with the 3 one-shots, we knew that it was a specific decision that they made to switch the story style over from telling the North and South and Balance style 3-part stories, continuing the comic timeline, to switch and do this sandbox style one-shot storytelling. Will they switch back after just one trilogy of one-shots? I'm not sure. So I think most of the speculation that I have to have really has to be based on the fact that we probably are expecting more Avatar one-shots. So my expectations for this would be, at the very least, I'd expect Faith Aaron Hicks to stay on as writer. Peter Wortman probably will stay on, but they might go for a different artist. I don't really know. It's hard to speculate because everyone is so quiet about like any tease of if they're working on anything. But that team seems to be working quite well. Why would they break it up while things are actually going pretty well? So more one-shots. What will they do? Well, the first 3 are the 3 female characters as part of Team Avatar. So logically it would maybe make sense that you do one-shots for the other characters. The only thing that the male characters. The only thing that kind of puts that up in the air is that two of those characters are like Aang and Zuko, who have been main huge focus characters in the other comics. Do they need a one-shot at this point? Of course there's stories you can tell with them. Just because they're main characters doesn't mean they're not suited to do a one-shot. But it's pretty notable that the most main character of the first round of one-shots, Katara, got probably the weakest book because they just chose the wrong thing. They didn't really know what they wanted to do. So unless they're willing to delve into some really interesting stuff with the characters, it's hard to say what they will or will not do. Sokka seems like, yes, he could do with a one-shot. He could use a story where he gets to be the centerpiece. That'd be quite nice. Maybe also have Suki be in that one as well. You know, that sort of thing. With Aang, I'd like a one-shot where we maybe go into his past a little bit more, because I think one of the coolest sort of short story stuff is Dragon Days, where it's Aang and Kuzan in Aang's like previous life before the ice. I'd love to see more of that, of like the era before the Fire Nation kind of started the war, basically. I'd love to see more of Aang's kind of younger life. Similarly with Zuko, I wouldn't mind a story if they told like a flashback story with Zuko. It's obviously very difficult to speculate about, say, if they decided to set a story in the comic timeline like the Toph comic, what exactly you'd be up to. Like Aang doing some kind of fun stuff with the acolytes, the air acolytes would be kind of cool. Zuko training Ki, I actually think is something that links into the main stories, but isn't like so big that you maybe could do as a one-shot. Just getting to see more of the sort of Ursa, Ikem, Noran kind of family dynamic with Ki and Zuko. That is something that you could do. The Sokka story, if they were to do that, I think, searching for the space sword is the really obvious one with Sokka, because he doesn't have a sword at this point as far as we're aware, and I feel he really needs to get that back before he can be kind of almost like treated seriously again, because he's been used in a very comedic situations a lot in the comics up to now, and he's had some decent action scenes, but I think he needs that sword to really be at his best. So hopefully he can either get a new sword or find his old one, and it'd be cool to see just how they go about telling the details of a story like that. Beyond that, obviously I think you're looking at your other sort of Suki level characters, so you have probably, would a one-shot with May work? I think you could, absolutely. A Ty Lee one-shot would be kind of cool. An Azula one-shot is, I think, what a lot of people would like, but they've had so many opportunities over the years since Smoke and Shadow. Why haven't they told anything with Azula since then? I don't know if necessarily that's something they would do here. And in general with one-shots, even if the Korra comics are to do one-shots, I think that's the important thing to keep in mind, is that, everyone wants Red Lotus backstory. I can't see them doing those as like one-shot comics. They just feel like they're kind of too big, they're too important, that they're way beyond the scope of what one-shots have been so far. So unless they give us a reason to believe that they'll do more, I don't know. Sure, the Suki comic has Suki backstory, but I think there's a very different, there's a different feel, tone, and importance level to the bit of Suki backstory that we get, compared to how impactful the likes of a Pali backstory would be, just in terms of the drama level associated with that. So yeah, are we looking at like Ira one shot? I think could work. There's options with some of these other characters. Like did they do something with Boomy, Hakoda? There's characters you can do, but I feel we are probably expecting one shots for Avatar comics. If they do go back to the trilogies, I think the really obvious one is to do a Smoke and Shadow sequel. You need to come back to it for multiple reasons. You need to come back to it to tell Azula's story, because there's no way Azula stays like that for the whole rest of her life. 2, you need to come back to Mei and Zuko's relationship and finally confirm that, do what's happening next with that, and just confirm that, this is the couple, this is the canon endgame ship for these two characters, these are Izumi's parents. You need to just get that out of the way. Like I said earlier, you need to come back to Ki and her firebending. You need to come back to Ursa for Azula purposes as well. And just a direct sequel to Smoke and Shadow is, I think, 100% needed. Beyond that, you kind of just have to do sort of the imbalance sequel and address more of what's going on with, Cranefish, slowly evolving into Republic City, and do the next step of that. As I've talked about when I've done these discussions previously, you have other things like, say, Zuko needs to get a dragon at some point. He needs to get a baby dragon at some point. Druk needs to be a thing. Aang needs to find other Sky Bison at some point. When does that happen? At what period in the characters' lives does that happen or not? Like, they need to address, those exact things. With Toph, I think you have a little bit of an open story with regards to her mother, Poppy. Obviously, the rift was more about Toph and her father, who seem to have a better relationship now. But it's still a situation where Poppy left Lau when they're not together. But we know by the time we get back around to Korra, and we have flashbacks of when Su Yin is sent off for her bad behavior, she's sent to stay with your grandparents. So that implies that, I guess, Lau and Poppy are back together. When does that happen? That could be an interesting thing, depending on how they come about that. You could go back to the Northern Water Tribe and fill in some blanks that happened post North and South. But like I said, I think the most interesting story is the Azula one. So that's where we're at with Avatar. With Korra, which is I think the most hyped, there's a really obvious story that everyone suggests, because it honestly is a really good idea, and they should do it, but I don't know if they will. And that is Korra and the crew go to the Fire Nation. We get to see the Fire Nation in Korra time period, which we haven't really seen before. That allows for some really cool world building that relates to sort of just the contrast of how things are now compared to, say, the Kyoshi era Fire Nation, to the War era Fire Nation, and so on. The only real insight we kind of have is just that the Fire Nation aren't at war with anyone, and Izumi doesn't want to use the Fire Nation military and bring them into a war. She doesn't want things to go back to that way. That speaks to leadership, clear change, but how does that affect the overall nation? How different is it now? That could be quite interesting. Two, it would allow characters like Izumi, potentially General Iroh, and also Izumi's daughter, who's a character we know who exists, but we haven't met yet, allows characters like that to come back into play, along with Zuko. So, that's cool. A group of characters we don't know too well, but getting to see more of them. It will be Mako and Bolin getting to see sort of the other side of their family heritage. They've seen the Earth Kingdom bossing, say, where their father is from. Let's see potentially where their mother's from. That would be kind of cool. Especially for Mako as a firebender to go to, the Fire Nation. That could be quite cool to give him a little bit of a spotlight and so on. And if indeed the Izumi's daughter is roughly the same age as Team Avatar, kind of early 20s, it also potentially opens the door to a romance between her and Mako, which I think was a planned idea previously. So stuff like that I think would be very, very cool to see. The question is just, are they fine with that being a story, as basically we just take a trip to the Fire Nation as a visit? Or does there need to be a villain, a threat, and a plot that it's something that we need to solve? Or can it just be a Avatar state visit to the Fire Nation? It's one of those things where I think most people will be relatively happy just getting to see all that cool character interaction and world building, but the creatives involved are probably going to be more along the lines of, no, there needs to be a reason to go there beyond just getting to see all this stuff. So what can it be? To me, Korra's main conflict and the thing that she needs to do as the Avatar is deal with the relationship between humans and spirits. I think Izumi could request Korra to come to the Fire Nation because the Fire Nation is having a particular problem with spirits. Because obviously the portals are open, so the spirits are around. The Fire Nation, I suppose, traditionally has not been super spiritual. They're better now, but maybe they're not super spiritual. There's maybe a need to fix that, and so there's your sort of Korra plot, is dealing with that. meeting Izumi, having more of that dynamic, and addressing a really obvious point of, I'd love to see Korra finally get some success with the spirits, and this seems like a way to do that and maybe build up to doing something bigger with the dragon spirit, who seems to be like leading the spirits during kind of Korra's era, and making a change for the better, and achieving that goal as the Avatar that I think she needs to. And that would allow, time for, like, obviously she's the main spirit expert along with Jinora. It'd give a reason for Jinora to go with Korra. Those two as the spiritual arc, and then it would give time for the others to have their more side plot thing of going off to maybe see the other side of Mako and Bolin's family, and maybe the princess shows them around, that sort of thing. Really cool idea for a story, because otherwise, based off the first two Korra comics, there's not a ton of plot points. You have the general plot point of the third spirit portal. The airbenders are now in charge of it. Are we going to do something more with that? Perhaps, but I think we need to move away from Republic City for a little bit, which is why I think some sort of a trip or adventure thing is needed. And that is while acknowledging that a lot of Ruins of the Empire was in the Earth Kingdom. I still think we need more of a break from Republic City, unless they have a plot that's really, really good. So that's why I hope they don't really come back to Tokuga, even though he's more of a spirit character at the moment. I think we just need to hold off on that for a while, unless you have an amazing story to tell. I don't think Tokuga worked all that well in the first book, and I'm not super excited to come back to him. It's maybe a little bit soon to do anything super big with Kuvira after Ruins of the Empire. I wouldn't mind, like, just her being there at the start just to acknowledge some continuity, but I don't think you need to have that be a massive focus immediately. And yeah, beyond that, it's just like Korra and the spirits, fixing that relationship, visit the Fire Nation at some point. And it feels like beyond that, it's just a story that we maybe couldn't predict whatsoever. Unless they do something I think that they probably should do, and that is, like, let some of the other characters really take the lead. Maybe have Korra be more in the background for a book, and have Mako maybe be the main character for a story for a little bit. Have it be more of, like, full-on police action. Mako, Lin are, like, the focuses. And do something like, you have that connection between Mako, Bolin, and Asami, where both of their parents were killed. Their parents were killed by firebenders. So was it Asami's mother and then both of Mako and Bolin's parents? What if that investigation pops up again? Like, that would be a really cool thing as a more police style story. That would be very emotional to find out if there is any connection between, those characters who are of similar ages, similar things happening to their parents, and who is it? Like, is it a triad, someone else? And Mako being quite high up in the police force, it'd be a really cool arc for him to try and take someone down, and how he deals with the emotions that are more heavily involved in that. They're the stories that I'm interested in, and it's just highlighting that we're not just stuck in this era where, like, nothing's going on. There's room to do stuff if you really commit to a story, but I don't know what's really going on, because even say, like, Bolin's arc, it feels like they're very much spinning the wheels with him. Like, they don't really know what direction they're going in. They seem to have kind of finally settled that he's going to be Julie's assistant, maybe learn some politics stuff, and maybe we'll have a progression with Bolin, and he'll move into more of a political role going forward, maybe when the elections do come back around. That'd be kind of cool, but that seems more of a long-term story, and I'm not sure where they're at with that. The real confusion around a lot of the speculation has to just be, if you come up with a good idea, why would they not do that as an Avatar Studios animated story versus as a comic? And that's where these announcements are actually going to be very key in terms of showing us what they are now in this era we're going into, where everything is going to be under Avatar Studios. All the story content is going to be planned by, I guess, the same group of people more heavily than it has been before. What type of stories are they allowing the comics to do, and which ones are they not? Because I struggle to think that we won't get some form of Avatar continuation as an animated project, or some form of Korra continuation as an animated project. Whether that be a movie or a short series or some OVAs or something like that, I think we'll get those two franchises will continue while they also do some new stuff. So what do they think is important enough has to be told in animation, and what can they leave for the comics to also do? Because you have to remember, and I think a lot of people maybe forget this, is that they told one of the most important stories in Avatar in the comics, The Search. They found Zuko's mom again in a comic. And it's a really, really good comic, and it's proof that the format can work for a huge story. So I'm so fascinated to see when these announcements eventually do come out, what there is and is not there. I would be disappointed if we switched to one-shots. Even though I think Korra actually might be able to work a little bit better if they did one-shots than the Avatar ones, just because I think you have a few more underdeveloped characters, and there's just, I think more characters where like, yeah, a one-shot for this character would work. I wouldn't mind an Asami one-shot, because I think she needs spotlight on her own to stand out a bit more. Mako needs a one-shot. And you know, there's a lot of other characters who you could also do something with. So there's just a bit of speculation about upcoming content, about like one shots or direct trilogies, what they can or can't do. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts on the official Cookbook gift set? Does it change your buying decision on it? And when these announcements finally happen, what do you think they will be? What Avatar comic will we get? What Korra comic will we get? And let's not forget that we're also maybe expecting a new novel as well. That's very difficult to speculate on. Kyoshi seems like the obvious thing, but I think they want to sort of have proof that they can do novels that work, that aren't just Kyoshi. So we'll see about that. But yeah, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.